My father's ancestors came across from Philadelphia to western Pennsylvania, some years before the Revolution, along with friends of theirs. There was, during the French and Indian War, the Indians came through, and this day the women were all together sewing things for a wedding of one of the young women. The men were home with the children, and when they came to the home of John Frederick Baker, when they came to his home, the Indians killed the men, killed the father and the older boys, and took the baby boy and bashed his head against the tree. And when Mother came home, this was all that she found. They took the daughter away with them and made her walk to the Indian camp miles away. And she lived there for many years among the Indians. She was a slave to the Indian chief's mother to work there. After the French and Indian War, these children that had been taken were recaptured and brought home. Many of them weren't happy to come back to the English life. They liked the Indian life. But the mother wasn't sure about this girl, whether she was the right one. And the English general said to her, "Is there a song that you sing at home?" And so the mother sang the song that they often sang in the evening before they went to bed. And the girl joined in, so she knew this was her daughter. The girl then went through her catechism. She still knew her catechism in German, even though she hadn't used the language for many years. So this is how our family ended up in western Pennsylvania. Many Bakers still live in that area. Now, Dad had a really interesting family. And here we have their picture. My father is the second from the left. He was born on July 4th, 1890.
One or
two or three, I'm not sure which. And every year we would come together, first of all down in Scottsdale at Grandma and Grandpa's house to celebrate this birthday and to bring the family together. So this was an important thing. Dad did not start to school until he was 8 years old, and he attended only 6 years. At the end of that time, he got a job in a factory in Scottsdale that made funeral gravestones, yes, made gravestones, and worked there some years until he got a job on the railroad as a fireman.
What did a fireman do?
The fireman had to shovel coal. Locomotives were driven by a coal-fired furnace that heated water to make steam, and this was the steam is what drove the train along the track. So it was a hard job, and most of the time he was on runs that went up into the mountains and down, so that they carried a car behind the locomotive that carried coal, and so he would have to go and get a shovel full of coal, walk back and throw it into the fire, go back and get another shovel full and then throw it into the... It was a very difficult job that my father had. But he made good money, and he was able to help his brother to go to college and then to seminary. That's
Howard.
Uncle Howard, who is the man on the far right in this picture. On Dad's right, on the left end of the picture, is Aunt Stella. She was always my favorite aunt. She and Dad helped her to go to secretarial school, and she became an outstanding secretary. She was always looked up to as a fine example of what a woman could do in the business world. I remember a trip that we made to Grandma and Grandpa's house. Aunt Stella was still living with them. She was not married yet, and she spent the whole day taking care of me. She brought out this beautiful doll that was her favorite, and we spent the day making clothes and putting them on this new doll. And when the time came to leave, Dad and I hurried down the hill to catch the streetcar, the trolley car, to take us home. And I was trying so hard to run and keep up with my father, and I dropped the doll and ruined her beautiful face. And for years I kept that doll and took great care of her because she was Aunt Stella's favorite. Next to Aunt Stella is my grandmother, Baker. And Grandma was a very intelligent lady and always had books and always would read stories to me. When she would tell a story, she would mimic the people in the story, and she really got their feelings and their accent just right. She was an actress in her own home.
Was that Sarah Bowman?
And her name was Sarah Bowman. I asked one time where she grew up, and Aunt Stella said, oh, she came from up in the mountains, and so I never did find out any more about her. Next to her on that front row is Grandpa. Grandpa was a blacksmith, and a blacksmith in those days, well, made the horseshoes and shoed the horses, made the plowing equipment, and all kinds of things to be used in the kitchen and in the gardening, and it was an important job because these things made from iron were central to the life of people out there in the West. Between Grandma and Grandpa are my Uncle Joe, who was next to Stella, the youngest in the family. Uncle Joe worked for the post office department. He was a train dispatcher, and he would gather up bags of mail at the start of his journey, and he would throw these letters into slots for each town along the way, and when the train stopped at the next town, he would leave off a bag of mail that was scheduled to go to that town, and he would pick up a bag from them that they already had. So between that and the next station, he had to sort out this mail and have it ready to change off at the next station. I think the mail even went faster in those days than it does now. Okay, and next to Grandpa then is Uncle Raymond. Uncle Raymond was the oldest in the family, and he worked in a plant in Scottsdale. Next is his sister, Elsie Fern. She went to Pittsburgh as a young girl to work in the household of a well-to-do family, the Gehring family in Pittsburgh. And so she married an older man who was well off. But when the Depression came, he lost his investments and they had to move from their beautiful big house into a smaller apartment building, and this was a sad situation. Then there's Uncle Howard. The dad helped put through seminary, and he became a Lutheran minister. It was always fun getting together with this family. Among them, they had a large number of grandchildren, and it always seemed that there would be three close in age, so that we would have our little groups that would always look forward to being together.
That's good.